If you care about your digital privacy, you have probably heard the "I have nothing to hide" argument 1,000 times. And in this video I want to talk about why. Why do most people think this is a valid argument? Why do most people not care about their privacy? Also not about their, or more particular, not about their digital privacy? And why do people like quote-unquote us care about these things, and why should we? So first up, we have to kind of understand what is even meant by that. Like, what does "I have nothing to hide" even mean? And for this, we need to kind of differentiate between two types of privacy. And I've made a video on that. You can watch that if you like want to know more of my thoughts on that. It's called Two Types of Privacy. The first is vertical privacy. And this is really privacy towards the system, quote unquote. And this system here means the total sum of all governments, all big companies, like stuff like that, institutions, organizations, and so on and so forth. And again, vertical privacy means your privacy towards all of these organizations, which we can kind of term the system, quote unquote. So yeah, so this is really what's all of this about. And this is also kind of what digital privacy is mostly about, I would say. But also, again, the nothing to hide argument refers to the system. On the other hand, we have horizontal privacy, and this is now privacy towards other people. So privacy towards your neighbor, your family members, friends, and so on and so forth. Alright, so the central question is, should you have something to hide? Because this is really what this argument, the "I have nothing to hide" argument, really boils down to. It says, well, I have nothing to hide because and what it implies is, because I am a good person, citizen, whatever. So I have nothing to fear from the government or from companies and so on and so forth. But with this, we really have to kind of differentiate two spheres. And I've tried to like graphically show this right here. So there are two circles, and the one on the left is the circle of like all things that are quote unquote wrong. And the other circle on the right is the circle of all things that are illegal. And with illegality, it's of course way easier to kind of categorize something as illegal or not. With wrong, it's more difficult, so I've kind of put that into quotes. And the middle part are all the things that are both wrong and illegal. So this is the kind of area I've numbered with 0. And then the area which I've numbered with 1 are the things that are wrong but are not illegal. And the area number 2 are things that are illegal but not wrong. And so what the nothing to hide argument basically implies is that all things that are wrong are also illegal, and the other way around. So that the areas 1 and 2 don't exist, and that there's only area 0. But this is not the case. Like in reality, I mean, I don't even have to give you examples for this. We all know this is not the case. We can look into the distant past, into the recent past, into the present. We can find like so many examples of things that are, well, maybe wrong but not illegal, and also of things that are illegal but not wrong. Like, this is not even a question. Everyone knows this, because the law is not perfect and reality is very complicated. And like, there are so many possibilities you can't, well, so far it hasn't been possible to like create perfect law. And even if you would be able to like technically create a perfect set of laws or not, it still depends on what you view as wrong. So this can never be like, yeah. So it really kind of reduces the term wrong in dimension and equates it with what is legal. So, and this is a pretty, like, a very common fallacy for like, yeah, I would say like quote unquote normies, is to equate everything that is legal with good, and the other way around. So everything that's illegal is also wrong. And this is really what creates the base of the I have nothing to hide argument, I would say. So, and this is also why, no, I shouldn't say this is why most people don't care, because that's not true. Most people don't care why most people don't care is because, I would say, they have no control, and they are also, well, I don't want to say, well, what's the word, lethargic maybe. So, it's not really lazy, more like, well, they are kind of in a position where they can't hope to change anything, so they have to kind of form their worldview to adapt to their situation, if that makes sense. So if, for example, if you are in a situation where everyone around you is using WhatsApp and you just kind of have to use WhatsApp to like function in your kind of environment, in your societal environment, then it's of course very, very difficult to say, well, WhatsApp is actually like, that's actually a bad thing, that they are harvesting all my data, that they're looking through all my messages and so on and so forth. So a natural defense mechanism is this I have nothing to hide argument. Well, I have nothing to hide anyways, ha ha ha. So I think this is like the most common one. But another one could also be the like idea, and I kind of want to go back to this slide. What I also want to say is that, I mean, there's always the question, okay, like what's wrong, what's illegal? Well, not what's illegal is not really a question, but what's wrong and what not, and how do these kind of two areas intersect? And it's always kind of difficult to argue about the present, because that's always kind of a ideological, like political argument, I would say. And it's also very difficult because, well, we are stuck in the present. If that makes sense. But it's way easier to then look into the future and say, well, maybe these two spheres, these two areas of wrong and illegal will in the future not overlap to that great of an extent, if that makes sense. So in the future, when maybe, I don't know, party X or politician Y or whatever is being elected or comes to power or whatever, then these could really be very out of sync. So there could be a lot of stuff that's maybe not wrong, but it is illegal because of some ideological reason, and the other way around. And with this kind of argument, you can very clearly see how the nothing to hide argument makes no sense. Because data and the digital realm is of such a quality that it is, I don't want to say it is immune to time, but it is almost immune to time, because everything that exists in the digital realm can possibly be stored forever, because storage is just so cheap. You can duplicate for free. Everything is, you don't have constraints of the real world. If you have a book, for example, you only have one copy of that book, it's very unlikely that it will last the test of time, unless it's a really good book, of course, unless you put in a lot of effort to preserving it. But it's different with the digital world. So, and also there's no natural law, you could say, or there's no argument to be had that, well, if evil party X comes to power, they will not use the data of the past. Like that makes no sense. Like that makes no sense at all. So even from that point of view, it's kind of nonsensical. All right. So I also want to talk about hiding things from other people, because, you know, in our society this is the most common way that things are. And that is, you have zero vertical privacy, so zero privacy, well, not you and not me, but like normal people, zero or de facto zero vertical privacy towards companies, towards the government, towards organizations, blah, blah, towards the system, quote unquote. But you have like, I don't want to say complete, but like pretty strong privacy towards other people. Because of course, the most people we interact with day to day are strangers. We don't know them. Or they're pretty much strangers, like a colleague, a work colleague, or an acquaintance. Like they're not, like, there's a reason, like, friend is a separate term from like colleague. And that is of course because we live in a highly anonymized society. And I mean, I don't want to go too deep into that because it's very much a separate topic, but it's very natural to want to hide certain things from other people, of course. Or not from other people, but from people we don't know. Let's just say that. But this goes much further, because you can also think, well, in an environment in which you and the people around you share the same world with you, and you're kind of aligned with what you think is right, how one should act, and how you actually act, then you don't really have to hide things from people. Like hiding things, you only hide things when you, well, have something to hide, when you think you have done something wrong in the eyes of other people, maybe, or when you fear that they might judge you, might talk bad behind your back, and stuff like that. And so this kind of goes into a much deeper topic of how our society is generally structured and how it, well, yeah, what it is. I hope that makes sense. And I think the very, like do I have this? No, this is the last one. Okay, so a very intuitive, maybe thought is that things should actually be the other way around. Because again, if we think about, okay, you want to hide things from the people you have to do with every day, from your colleagues and stuff like that, because they should know that much private stuff about you, that much personal stuff, and so on and so forth. You really kind of think, well, should it be that way? Like, shouldn't I spend most of my time with people from whom I have nothing to hide, because they understand me, because they share the same worldview, because we are kind of aligned with our entire view of the world, as I said? Like, shouldn't this be rather the case? Shouldn't I like spend most of the time with people who I would consider friends or family? And of course, yeah, it should be like that. So, and the other way around. So shouldn't I hide, like, should big, powerful organizations like governments and companies and stuff like that, and like international NGOs and stuff like that, should they really know everything about me, or most things at least? Like, should it really be like that? Because these organizations, they don't care about individuals. And also the law doesn't care about individuals. The law kind of, well, at least in our, like, today's understanding, in our today's law, it can't account for, like, individual differences, let's just say. And I mean, this is also because of scale and so on and so forth. But okay, so again, you kind of have to kind of flip it around to where you have pretty much complete vertical privacy. So, for example, government knows nothing about you, and almost no horizontal privacy. So the people around you know most, if not everything there is to know. And again, this is I think this can be counterintuitive on the one hand, because if we think about it in like today's context, this makes no sense, obviously, because I mean, government, for example, has to know certain things about people to be able to enforce the laws and to keep order. Yeah. So this is the reason things are as they are. And I also kind of talked about this in like the video I did on optimization. So privacy, modernity, and optimization, I think it was called. Where I talk about also, like, for example, if we think about like security, it's very important to be able to keep security, to have data. Because if you are kind of tapping in the blind, you don't know anything, how are you able to keep order? I mean, information is power, and you need a certain power to keep everything secure in a highly technical world like ours, that is. All right, so I hope all of this kind of makes sense. I think it's difficult to kind of get a grasp on these things because they are very abstract. But I think the I have nothing to hide argument is so common that I hope you kind of got my point on that. So, but let me like kind of bring it to the point on my view on this. So, I think the nothing to hide argument very much misses the point entirely, because it is not. I mean, for like people who care about their digital privacy and who are like into computers and stuff, it's not about having something to hide. Right? Like that's like the people who want like who have something to hide are people like normally are people who fall inside the if I go back to this graph, who fall inside like area 0. So people who are doing something wrong, which is also illegal. Who would have thought? So people who are committing theft and stuff like that, for example. They, of course, have something to hide. And, like, incidentally, like, I think, I kind of have the feeling most of the people who fall in this area 0 are kind of very bad at hiding things. Like, they use all kinds of normie technologies and stuff like that. Because that's, of course, the easiest stuff to use. But, okay, that's like kind of another topic. But, yeah. So and people who are in the digital privacy, they have nothing to hide per se. Like, it's not about like actually having something to hide, like about actuality, but about possibility, about like out of principle, that is. So yeah. So this was kind of my thoughts just off the top of my head, just like kind of talking about it. Again, as I said in the other 2 videos about privacy, I've written an article on my website. It's called Thoughts on Privacy, and in this I kind of go through kind of these 3 broad topics and kind of mold my thoughts. So, and this was kind of the 3rd video on this text I've written. Yeah, so it goes through the distinction between horizontal and vertical privacy, and then about like, can privacy even exist in a modern world, and how does this all relate to like the I have nothing to hide argument, and also how does it relate to like people who care about the digital privacy, like who self-host stuff and stuff like that. And let me also say, I feel like I should also mention this. All of this does not mean like, well, you shouldn't have anything to hide because government doesn't care about you. Like, if it came off like that, if you understood my point of view like that, then that is very wrong. I do not mean to say that at all. Otherwise, I wouldn't self-host my stuff. Otherwise, I would just use, I don't know, all the normal stuff every other person uses also. So, yeah. So yeah, I think that's it. I think that's all I wanted to say on this. Again, if you care about my thoughts in more detail, read the article. It's very difficult to kind of convey like abstract points of view and abstract arguments in speech. I found. So it's much easier to write about this stuff, and also it's not only easier to write about it. I mean, you can argue about like if writing is easier than speaking, but it's very much easier to read about it, because then you can like kind of read a sentence you didn't understand again and kind of jump back and forth. And I mean, reading is just way better for understanding. Like, just read. I should maybe make another video, a separate video on why reading is actually like important, kind of, to understand things in more depth. But okay, that's a separate thing. All right, that's it. Have a nice day.